I'm back on.
Well, I guess I'm just running a little bit.
Hello?
Yes, we're almost about to start.
Okay, I'm all set here.
Recording. Welcome to session 27 of Living is Dying. My name is Sering, and today we are honoured to be joined from Brazil by our guest speaker, Chagdud Khadro. Ross and Annie Zangmo are our tech support. We begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and other lands and recognise their connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Introducing you, dear Khadro, on our Living is Dying program is a wish come true for myself and our team. It's truly wonderful that you are here to speak to us about Phowa and Sur offerings, especially as it's 4:30 in the morning there in Brazil. Thousands have been blessed to receive your lineage teachings on the Longsal Ningpo Phowa, transference of consciousness at the time of death, and other teachings and practices related to death and dying. Your compassionate and skillful way of teaching ensures easy accessibility to these most profound and liberating practices. For those who are encountering Chagdud Khadro for the first time, Jane Tromgay, as she was previously known, became the spiritual wife and devoted student of the renowned Nyingma master Chagdud Rinpoche in 1979. Rinpoche ordained Khadro as Lama or teacher in 1997 and invested her as the spiritual director of Chagdud Gompa in Brazil, where she lives at the beautiful Khadro Ling. Since Rinpoche's parinirvana, Khadro has tirelessly focused on sustaining the high caliber of Vajrayana training Chagdud Rinpoche established. As a writer and editor in her earlier professional life, Khadro collaborated with Rinpoche for his autobiography, Lord of the Dance, and she compiled commentaries of his teachings on the Dujam Tersa Nundro, Longsal Ningpo Phowa, and the concise version of Upam Turkten's Red Tara practice. Chagdud Khadro graciously and tirelessly accomplishes the seeds planted by Chagdud Rinpoche, the construction of Padmasambhava's Pure Land Palace at her beautiful Khadro Ling, translation and publishing texts in Portuguese and Spanish, projects related to Buddhist education and to death and dying. Khadro has edited many translations of Tibetan works and was managing editor of Padma Publishing in the United States. Khadro supervises the activities and teaches in all of the Chagdud Gompa Brazil centers and Chagdud Gompa Hispanoamerica. She also teaches in Europe, United States, Australia and New Zealand, and is on the board of the directors of the Middle Way Education. I will now hand over and thank you again, dear Khadro, for making time from your busy schedule to be with us today.
Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. And I'm so happy to see a lot of old friends in these little thumbnails up there. At Khadro Ling, we have just concluded the teachings of Jose Tugme's mind training last night. And these have really heavily influenced my thinking. A while ago, I went to Chagdud Rinpoche's son, Jigme Rinpoche, and I said, 40 years, I'd really like to be a practitioner. I'd really like to go deeper. And he said, maybe you need to start again with the mind trainings. And he recommended Dogo Khyentse Rinpoche's teachings on the mind trainings of Atisha. And so that book, I think, has deeply become meaningful for me. The way of cultivating bodhicitta in every aspect of one's life, with every breath. And so I want to say a little bit about that, because the challenge that we have is not so much in dying well, but in living well. We have this precious opportunity. And I'm now almost 77. And so I think about what I can do in this last lap of this marathon that we call life. The bodhicitta of really wishing well for others and taking their suffering and offering their happiness breath by breath. It can be integrated in every aspect of your practice. And at the time of death, the instructions are extremely important. Whether you do the Langsam Ningpo Phowa or a different Phowa practice, the Phowa in the Tara meditation for the dead, this is a transference as well. This is Phowa. This Phowa means transference. It means from one state of mind to another state of mind. And so this is what we need to navigate well. And the core of that navigation is really bodhicitta, the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. In these teachings over the last, I guess it's 10 days, one thing that surprised me was Jigme Rinpoche said that in the bardo, we can actually help others. I've always thought, okay, after the moment of death in the bardo and that transition, I just want to be fearless in terms of my own kind of North Star that was used in a meeting, a middle way education, and that North Star of Amitabha Buddha, the lineage lamas. I thought, okay, I know to navigate that and keep my eye on that. But actually the idea of bodhicitta being carried over into the after-death bardas, of seeing all those other beings flailing around, helpless to their karma, and having the power of bodhicitta and wishing them well, and being able to help them find an auspicious rebirth, that is really a new thought for me. I never thought that would be possible. He said, actually, that because they don't have bodies, and you're in a situation of mind to mind, that maybe it's easier to help them than when they do have embodiment in a physical form. And so that's kind of the edge of my meditation now, this wish to not only die well myself, and of course most of you know that I've had lots of thoughts about that, how to use the moment of death and how to write a living will so that moment isn't interfered with. But more and more, as people have died in this last 2 years, and Sangha members have died, and catastrophic events have happened, and then we realize that there's not much to control at the moment of death. We can try to do it. We can write our will. We can write our living will and say what we want and don't want. But actually, the only thing that we really have control over is our mind, and we need to start there. So the Longsa Ningpo Phowa is a very great method that Chagdud Rinpoche thought about when he came out of Tibet. He told his teacher that what he would choose to do is go back into retreat, because he had had it. His retreat had been interrupted by his own retreat master's death, Chamge Rinpoche. And his root lama, Khenpo Dorje, said, no, you can't go back into retreat. You must help sentient beings. The Tibetans had come out of Tibet, and they will need teachers. They'll need to be guided in this, basically an extended trauma of exile from Tibet. And so then Rinpoche gave it a lot of thought. And in his retreat, he had thought he was going to die. And he learned several different kinds of phowa. And considering what would be most beneficial to the Tibetans after they were exiled from their homeland, then he decided that he would teach phowa widely. And then when he came to the West, he thought again about what would be most beneficial. And he thought, okay, a lot of these practitioners are not going to be able to make a 3-year retreat. They're not going to be able to go into extended teachings. And a lot of you out there, I know, have had 3-year retreats, and you've had many extensive teachings. But phowa is a way to have a method that's reliable in case of emergency. If you haven't fully realized your deity practice or Mahamudra or Dzogchen, that you know that by directing your mind toward Amitabha Buddha, then you will be able to transfer your consciousness with the blessing of Amitabha. And so then the phowa of 3 recognitions is the recognition of oneself as Chenrezig, and the path to Amitabha is the central channel, and the destination is Amitabha himself. Amitabha Buddha, why? Because all of the Buddhas are enlightened and fully capable of integrating us into their enlightened mind stream. But Amitabha made those special vows that even if we have residual karma, even if we haven't been able to purify all of the afflictive emotions, then by relying on him at the moment of death, then we will receive his blessing. It's like a hook meeting an eye. It pulls us up. And so that's our confidence that the enlightened mind of Amitabha is intentionally directed to us as practitioners at the moment of death. And by doing this practice of Longsa Ningpo, of the 3 recognitions, or even reciting the name of Amitabha, remembering Amitabha's Pure Land at the moment of death, we can direct our mind to that great high state of being. With the teachings of the Jasi Tokme and Atisha, and the teachings I received in these last 10 days, they give a deep motivation for doing that. And many practitioners over the years question the validity of going to the Pure Land because they feel like they'll be disengaged from the needs of sentient beings. And so is that truly the path of the Bodhisattva? We've cultivated this Bodhisattva path to benefit sentient beings, and then we go to the Pure Land and we complete our training in the Pure Land. But are we able to connect back to the suffering of sentient beings in this state of non-suffering that is the environment of Amitabha? And in the aspiration for Samantrabhadra, it clarifies that. In the verses 57, it says, when my time of death arrives, may all my obscurations vanish. Then may I behold in person the Buddha Amitabha and go directly to his blissful realm. Arriving there, may all these aspirations, each and every one, be actualized. Then may I fulfill them all without exception, bringing benefit to beings as long as worlds exist. Emerging from the immaculate and beautiful lotus, in that excellent and joyous mandala of the victorious ones, may I very soon receive the prophecy directly from the Buddha Amitabha. Receiving all the prophecy, may the billions of emanations that I send forth, with just the power of my mind, bring vast benefit to beings everywhere. And so then what I suggest is that we clarify our aspirations for the Pure Land now as we clarify our Bodhisattva practice. All of the trainings that we do, the deity practices, the mind trainings that support the deity practices, the transmissions that we receive from our great Rinpoches in Mahamudra and Dzogchen, that all of them give us the meditative space and the means to clarify our own potentials as bodhisattva, our own aspirations as bodhisattva, so that when we die, then in the very moment of our death, the fears of samsara and the disruption of our physical beings don't overcome us, that we know that the lineage of these great practitioners will guide us through the Barda, and that our aspirations made now in our life, in our daily life, as we seek to benefit others through loving kindness and compassion, and through all the skillful means that we're cultivating through specific practices. These qualities of the deities, including Red Tara, the qualities of the deities, including Chenrezig, the qualities of the deity, Amitabha, and all of the bodhisattvas, that all of those qualities will be freed in our being, that at the moment of death, after our last breath, the breaking of the lamp of this body will give illumination in the Barda, and will be able to guide those others who are lost to their karma, that they are lost to their ignorance of their essential being, their sanity, their catapulted, spinning through karmic trajectories without any direction of mind, looking back to their homeland that has been lost, looking back to their friends that they can't communicate with, looking back and fearing their own karma of this lifetime, that will be able to illuminate their minds and direct them toward the purest state possible and to the highest rebirth possible. And so then with that in mind, then we pray now to Amitabha Buddha, inseparable with our Lama. For me, that Lama is Chagdud Rinpoche. Chagdud Rinpoche embodied the compassion and wisdom of Amitabha Buddha, generously of Guru Rinpoche. And through peaceful means and also wrathful means, then he cut through a lot of our ignorance and gave us these skillful means. At the moment of my death, I hope that I remember him. This pandemic, with all of its adversities and the epidemics that are surely going to befall us in this degenerate age, then they are really potent reminders, because we live relatively comfortable lives. I mean, you can see my room here. It's kind of its own little Pure Land with the pictures of my teachers and the books read and unread on my shelves, and around me are good people, so comfortable. But the pandemic reminds us that death is never very far away. The unexpectedness of it, we didn't really expect this epidemic. I remember at the end of, I was in Uruguay when the newspaper accounts of an epidemic rolling through the populations of this world became like so potent that it canceled a teaching tour to Chile, and came back here, and we all regrouped as a Sangha and established these protocols, and then stayed locked down for two years. And in those 2 years, it was a constant reminder of the suddenness of losing breath, the suddenness of not being able to communicate, the suddenness of losing our friends, our home, our support, our jobs, everything. All of those made the teachings that we've had real, and the necessity of the Bodhisattva path to reach out from our isolated rooms and pray for others. All of that became very, very immediate and expansive. It was like the populations of this world suddenly became a network of suffering. Those that we had ignored, suddenly they're similar in filling the ICUs and the halls of the ICUs and dying. It was really, in that adversity, it made the teachings real. And in that way, it's a kind of blessing if we can transform the adversity into a potent reminder, and that reminder into expansive compassion for others. And so the very trajectory of dying, the sinking into the loss of the potency of our earth element, the confusion, the coldness, the loss of breath, all of these falling apart of our elemental cohesion, then finding within that the luminous potential of the Buddha Amitabha, inseparable with our teachers. We have to make that inseparability strong and pervasive, so strong that the disintegration of our physical being is fading like a dream, and the potency of our mind and intention is like a great wave of reaching out, connecting with the blessing of the lineage. And that doesn't fail. All of these great beings themselves have died. The Buddha himself demonstrated impermanence by his own parinirvana. Guru Rinpoche, in leaving this world system in a rainbow body, he demonstrated that the potency of mind can reach across realms of being and penetrate our own mind whenever we truly from our heart seek it for ourselves and others. So with the Phowa practices, with the Phowa of three recognition, the mind rides on the breath. We visualize the mind as a tigle, as all of the aspects of our consciousness are the five senses, the mental consciousness, the consciousness of the fictive emotions, the alaya itself is embodied in a single luminescent tigle, and we allow that tigle to arise through the power of breath, through the crown chakra, to the heart mind of Amitabha. That's our destination, inseparable with our Guru. And so then that frees us to the pure potential of our own mind. Our own mind is the source of that pure land. That pure land is with us all the time, but it takes the power of breath and pure intention and the blessing of the Guru to make us recognize that. And so that really is the Phowa. It's like the Phowa of mind itself meeting the great enlightened mind of the Guru. With the Tara, for ourselves, if we've really come to realize Tara or any deity in its full extent, then we've actualized the qualities of that deity. Then in the moment of death, the Dharmakaya experience is not different from the samadhi of suchness that we practice and deity practice. The arising of the deity is not different from the Sambhogakaya after death. If we have that integration with Chenrizu, Red Tara, whichever deity that you fully practiced, then in that moment it's a Phowa. The qualities of the deity are completely present, and the deities, all of them, represent the full array of enlightened qualities. In the Tara meditation for the dub, then we, as practitioners of Tara, have the stability of our visualization and the blessing of empowerment. And in that stability, we summon the consciousness of the deceased. It becomes a tigle, and we hook it with our mind, whether we visualize the light rays being hooked, or we simply know mind to mind that it brings the tigle of the deceased consciousness, merging it with the enlightened consciousness of Tara. That is Phowa, that is transference, that is bringing the deceased mind from the bardo after death to the pure state of Tara. But I also want to offer this third way of Phowa, which has been informing me in these last weeks. In the book Enlightened Courage, Khyentse Rinpoche goes through the 5 strengths of which is the strength of the impetus, the intention of bodhicitta, and they're familiar with the practice of bodhicitta in daily life. You know, bringing the mind to daily life, bodhicitta through the cultivation of, say, the 4 measurables, like seeing all beings in their quality, seeing the Buddha nature, seeing their wish for happiness, and joining them in their wish for happiness as our loving kindness. They wish to take their suffering upon ourselves through Tonglen, the joy of doing that, the very joy, and passing through the moment-to-moment events of our daily life with that intention, that aspiration, that at the moment of death, that we bring them, those who have deceased and those who are still living, closer to the pure nature of their being, nature, their Buddha nature, by the power of our intention. And rejecting the self-centeredness that binds us to our egocentricity. The fear of death is a form of egocentricity. If we really think about it, we're in an illusory body, and all of this confluence of our being is moment to moment changing, and death is simply a big drama of that. It's our big drama. And so then if we've cultivated that by rehearsing, thinking about our death, thinking about the death of others, and then a lot of you have been caretakers of those who are dying, that you've really been the compassionate companions of those who are dying. Of course, you have less fear, having seen it yourself. Then in your own dying, you know that naturally it falls apart, that that insistent response of the ego, actually, it was empty too. And so, what Khyentse Rinpoche says that if you can, the Phowa of Three Recognition says, okay, have somebody crank up your hospital bed and remind you, okay, now you're dying, maybe do the Phowa before you become too distracted by the wind energy dispersing. In the practice of mind training at the moment of death, you simply lie on your side. And most of us will be lying down when we're dying. There's very few people who sit up in the moment of death. It takes a lot of willpower to do that. There's a Zen story of in Zen, they really want to sit up. And so then this Zen practitioner said, this comes from that Graceful Exits book. He said, well, other practitioners can sit up. And so he stood up and stood upside down. He did a headstand. And his sister came along and she just whacked him and said, you show off, and knocked him over. But, and Chagdud Rinpoche's father actually, at the moment of death, stood up and took the pose of Vajrapani. It was so powerful that the bed broke. But anyway, in the mind training, we just lie in the Buddhist position on our right side and press our nostril. And at that time, then you continue your bodhicitta practice of the breath, of breathing in the suffering of others and wishing them happiness on the out breath. And that carries you to the last breath. With that as your aspiration, your bodhisattva aspiration, then in the Barda that continues, and maybe you and I will truly be able to traverse the Barda and find enlightenment there through the pure intention of a bodhisattva. So I'm going to let you ask questions about the Phowa practice because maybe you have very specific ones. The problem with the Phowa of Three Recognitions is it depends a lot on timing. Like you really, you have to be quite fearless in the Barda of the moment of death and not get distracted and pay attention to the deterioration so that when you feel that the wind energy is dispersing and you're going to lose it and you won't be able to use that last breath to catapult your consciousness through the central channel, then you have to start practicing Phowa then. And so then the tricky part is everybody is encouraging you to live maybe, except your few Phowa practitioner friends just trying to shoo those other people out of the room. And then there's a lot of distraction, and maybe because of the fire energy, there's this moment of clarity and like energy and agitation, and you think, okay, maybe I'm going to survive. And there's that kind of illusion too. And so then the Phowa of Three Recognition really does depend a lot on willpower, and we might be weak in our body and miss the moment. but the pure intention to transfer the consciousness, that doesn't so much depend on willpower. That depends on being familiar in your lifetime and continuing it with your death, dying, and into the after-death Spartas. And I've wanted to say this for years because you caregivers out there, you Rigpa people, you other caregivers, those of you who work as health professionals, you know, we all practice Tonglen, we all practice our support, our companionship with all the skillful means. And these are really collected in various books. I really like Karen DeLea's book. But I wanted to say that it's wonderful if the dying person could practice Tonglen, if they had that power of mind and bodhicitta. Yeah, if it isn't just receiving the companionship of others, if it's also giving the compassion to those others surrounding us who are suffering in the loss of us, who are suffering in the boredom when we don't die on time, which is a real factor, suffering in in the loss. If we could do Tonglen for them and for the healthcare professionals who are serving us in our dying, if we could do Tonglen for the others in the ward. The one person that I know did this was Chagdud Rinpoche. And I think it was 97. He almost died of a heart attack in Rio. He was having a heart attack at the time of a Tara Sur. So there were a lot of people there, and you know, everybody had gathered, and it was like a really big deal. It was hard to leave that ceremony and take him to a clinic because we weren't sure what was happening, and he didn't complain. That was the other thing. He wasn't saying, you know, I'm in this dire pain of a heart attack. He was just not feeling well. But at that point, there's like a clear indication to me that we had to take him. And so he went to a clinic, and they said later that that everyone in that clinic, both the patients and the nurses and the doctors, by the power of his presence and the power of his prayers, everybody calmed down. Everybody felt more spacious. It was like so much more peaceful. There he was, wires going everywhere, doing his mantra. And so maybe, and remember, Jay, I was there when he died. He was still doing mantra. He had the power of the Mantrayana, and that carried him from his last breath into the Barda. And then the next step, his beloved old body let go into a state of meditation, and it was integrated, you know, just like spread light throughout the room. So that's the power of his bodhisattva intention and his illumined mind. And we have that possibility ourselves. If we can only overcome the fear and the willingness to accept pain, to take on even more pain, the pain of others. That's what he demonstrated in that clinic, and that's what he demonstrated through his life. So I'm using up all the time. I always enter these kind of Zoom online things and think I have nothing to say. Then I overshoot by talking too much.
No, not at all, Khadro. It's really wonderful. And before we start the questions and answers, I was just wondering if you could please just read through the Red Tara Sur practice for us.
That's what I want to do next, is give the transmission of this and also talk about it a little bit. Because again, it's like a quintessential bodhisattva. So in Tibetans, Sanjay Chudan Sachi Chagnan La Chanchu Baru Dagi Chapsuchi Dagi Jinsaginam Sanamchi Drila Panchi Sanjay Drupa. The Buddha, Dharma, and the excellent assembly of Sangha, until I attain enlightenment. In these I take refuge. By my practice of the 6 perfections, may all sentient beings attain the state of Buddhahood. Instantly, one is transformed into the mother of compassion, Arya Red Tara. Ram, Yam, Kam. With Ram, the offering substances are burned by the fire of pristine awareness. With Yam, the charred remains are scattered by the wind of pristine awareness. With Kam, the water of pristine awareness washes away every stain of ordinary concept and habit. Om Hung, Om Hung, Om Hung. With Om, all space is transformed into the all-encompassing container. With Ah, phenomena becomes the desirables, brimming within the container, with whom they billow forth in inexhaustible multiplicity, offering to the 4 guests. Chi Chang Yan Se Chi Do Yun Ching Queen Chi Si Ji Go Fu Yun Ten Dan Yun Ning Ji Get Ri So Kuna Chi Shin Ni Sin So Do Drip Jan Ni Do Ni Pa Nin Pa La Cho Ji Shi Yun Teri Tam So Ha. Boundless clouds of desire but fill basic space, which are fully offered to the 3 jewels, the protectors, the guest of compassion, and the guest with harmful intent. May the extensiveness of our offering fulfill the guest of honor. May the 2 obscurations be removed and the 2 accumulations be completed and the 2 benefits result. When performing the accumulation of the Sur, a single recitation of the prayer and mantras, substance of Sur, as the Sur substance is offered, counts as 1 accumulation. This virtuous accumulation of merit we offer so that all obstacles dissolve, and at the time of our death, each of us may find ease in dying and swift rebirth in the pure land of great bliss, quickly attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so there's so much that's here. When we do the refuge in bodhicitta, we visualize Tara in the space in front as our witness of our intention. And above Red Tara is Amitabha Buddha. And then we ourselves transform into Arya Red Tara and accomplish the Sur offerings and the 3 whites and the 3 sweets, which is on the back of the practice. Let's see here. It's the 3 whites are butter, yogurt, milk, and sweets, honey, sugar, and molasses. So we use brown sugar, which includes molasses. Tibetans use sampa, we can use wheat flour, and it's easier if you roast it. And it's easier if you don't make it too wet. And you can use any pan that hasn't been used for cooking. You can't use a pan that's been used for meat. I remember Annie Dias here, I don't know if she remembers this, but I did a Sur demonstration in New Zealand. And I was in Chile before I went to New Zealand. And Chile is a source of copper in the world. And so in the airport, they had this little copper pan. And I bought the copper pan and we lit the fire in the center. And the Sur substance, as well as the pan, burned up. We had this like melted copper. It was a complete offering of Sur, pan and all. The way Chagdud Rinpoche started doing Sur is that he was told he was going to die and that he should do Sur every day. And so for a while he was carrying around this charcoal in his suitcase and everything, get all over everything, black specks on the clothes. And so then he just stopped doing it. And we took it on. We've never stopped doing Sur. And some people here, there's one woman who had 3 different kinds of cancer. And she was an epidemiologist, and we had like graphic descriptions of all 3 kinds. But she set up this whole furnace outside her house and did 100,000 of these, and a huge billowing smoke everywhere. And she overcame all 3 kinds of cancer. And for me, I did a really extensive Sur practice because Lama Tsering wanted to benefit every single sentient being who died in the tsunami of 2004. And so then we were doing a death ceremony. And I really believe in death ceremonies. But from that time until this, I only do them for one person at a time. But we had 400,000 people. And she had gathered like 400,000 of something. Maybe it was only pennies for each one, but it was enough for each person. And it just felt inadequate. It felt like, okay, we've done this, but maybe not everybody is satisfied with our offering in the death ceremony, like the little Sur that you do in the death ceremony. And so then afterwards, we did this huge Sur ceremony to continue those offerings. It was very satisfying. Because in Sur, you're invoking the blessings of the enlightened Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, especially the infallible Bodhisattvas at the 10th Bhumi. Their blessings you're invoking on behalf of all sentient beings and the protectors of virtue and sentient beings of the 6 realms who receive these offerings in whatever way they need. And then our karmic creditors who really have a grievance that we have harmed them in some way or ignored them in their dying. There are all kinds of ways that these grievances accumulate and we're not even aware of them, and they can hinder us and trouble us in our own dying. And so then they're satisfied. But the spirits, in certain places, I think particularly of Uruguay, they're like very strong, and Australia too. They're very strong landholders, spirits who've held the land and are attached to the land, and their land has been violated, and they're, if not actually actively angry, and they're at least disgruntled. And so then the Sur offering, they receive this in a way that pacifies them. And we ourselves can never have the intention harming this, of thinking that those spirits should be banished and subjugated and, you know, put under a stupa. They instead need to be given the food, the sustenance of the sur, the smoke imbued with the power of blessing, which is in the Dutse. And so then that's how we, it's a very effective way of satisfying them. Temporarily, you have to keep doing it. And then for us, what we receive, our satisfaction, is that both our afflictive emotions and our intellectual confusion, the cloud, our bodhisattva, our bodhicitta intentions, they are dispersed, and our accumulations of merit and wisdom are completed by both the substance offerings, which are the beginning of the focus, and our intention, which multiplies it and makes it limitless. And the two benefits result. For us, we realize Dharmakaya, that state that's our basic unborn emptiness, our emptiness imbued with awareness, the Dharmakaya that we seek to realize in all our meditation, the Dharmakaya that we will experience after the moment of death. And then for the benefit of others, then they are benefited by the Rupakaya. And so then our aspiration of Rupakaya should be on all levels, that we attain the pure land of Amitabha and we emanate from there whatever is needed in samsara for however long samsara continues to the end of time. And that we also emanate as forms that are relatable, that we take willing rebirth in samsara to propagate the truth of the Dharma. And then we dedicate that the dedication itself is another moment of expounding the offering. We don't hold to the virtue. Instead, the virtue expands like a cup of water in the ocean to whoever can receive it. And by the very intention of our dedication, we realize again the empty nature, the illusory nature of all of this, that allows dedication to become all-pervasive compassion. Okay, that's it for me. Questions?
Oh, thank you. And perhaps mention on the other side of the page of the liturgy, we have the Tara meditation for the dead, and you did mention that as being a type of Phowa, yeah? Was that?
Yeah, because Phowa is translated transference. And when we transfer the consciousness of a being from one state to another, that is transference. And so then in the Phowa of three recognitions, we're transferring our consciousness to the state of Amitabha Buddha. In the Phowa of the meditation, in the Phowa of the compassionate hook, which is also the Chenrezig Phowa, then we're transferring the consciousness of the deceased to the state of Amitabha Buddha. In the Phowa of the Tara, then we're transferring the consciousness of the deceased into the state of Tara. Sometimes because in our Tara practice, our Tara is inseparable from Amitabha. Our Tara is Sambhogakaya emanation of Amitabha. Sometimes I take a feather step or just going pit and sending the consciousness up.
Oh, thank you. And there's already been questions in the chat box about the liturgy for the Red Tara Sur practice, and this will be included in the resources on the website, on the Living as Dying website, along with the recording of Khadro's amazing teaching. So you'll be able to find it there.
Okay.
I'll start reading the questions. Dear Khadro, I'm trained in a Dakini Phowa, yet I pray daily to be reborn in the pure realm of Padmasambhava. Would it be better to focus on one particular pure land, or can these practices be seen as non-conflicting?
What I think we need to do is we don't want to be confused at the time of our dying, and we don't know how much time we're going to have in the bardo of dying, because we can be hit by a car, and we have to have that reflexive transference. And so I think it's good to really direct your intention to the source of your greatest faith. If it's Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land, then Guru Rinpoche promises that his mind will draw your mind to his Pure Land. The thing about Amitabha's Pure Land is that if we have residual karma, then we have that interlude of purification in a lotus. In Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land, I don't know what happens, because the descriptions are from Deluxe, like Chagdud Rinpoche's mother. And she went there, her consciousness was there and perceived the whole thing. Sur Khandra the same. And so you have to ask your teacher, like how that works. But I think it's good to train in one phowa, decide on that, and make sure that's in place. So it's a reflex, not a moment of remembrance. And we have a long dying, the practice of Tonglan in that dying. I think that is really beautiful. And at the same time, when we're wishing the temporary and ultimate happiness of others, then probably the surest way for them is through Amitabha.
Thank you. Does the Phowa practice depend upon the dying person realizing the visualization of Amitabha, or is it possible that a practitioner just experiences the golden light without form?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I haven't died recently. It was a long time ago. The Pure Land is really within the nature of your own mind. Know that. It's the environment of Amitabha Buddha, but it's also the purest environment of your own mind. And so I think that how you experience is how you cultivate it. And in the Pure Land schools, there's been divergence on this, whether you just cultivate the name of Amitabha, you have like all of these meritorious deeds that you do. The Phowa of Three Recognitions is very specifically directed to the to the visualization of Amitabha, and I think to do that yogic 3 recognitions Phowa, that when you train, you need very good visualization. I really encourage people to visualize clearly. And then if they are able to visualize clearly in the Phowa of 3 recognitions, the whole training of visualization becomes clearer for other practices. And so at the moment of death, though, like if you've ever been in a near miss, like where you could have died, then it's your reflex where you've directed your faith in this lifetime, in this bardo of the birthplace, the cultivation of a focus within daily life. So it's good to visualize your teacher over your head or Amitabha over your head, this kind of thing.
Thank you. Many thank yous coming in. Annie Dai, dearest Khandrila, I remember that little pan well. It made me chuckle again. Thank you. Delicious teaching, deeply nourishing. Yeah, more thanks. No more specific questions, more thank yous.
I have a question, Khadro.
Yes.
What role does chud practice play in caring for the transition of the deceased?
Chud.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's several different chuds. The trauma chud that I'm familiar with actually has a very elaborate Phowa practice that's much harder to learn than the 3 recognitions. But the chud practice, what it does is that it cuts our ego clinging, the clinging to an inherently existent self. If you cut that, then it's easier to die. That at the moment of death, if you like say, okay, here's my body, eat it up, take it, I don't care, it's just a pile of food for the rest of you. Then if you have that mindset, then at the moment of death, then you will not have too much problem in letting your body go. I practice this, my ideal death is, I have, it's kind of embarrassing, but I practice sometimes in Uruguay and there are lots of vultures. And there's another practitioner, there used to be a vulture that sit in a tree and watch him meditate, thinking if he died, he was meat. And I thought, okay, what I'd really like to do is meditate alone and deteriorate, and the vultures would come. And then one time I was in a 6-month retreat there, and I thought, okay, I wonder if the vultures will come if I'm lying down. I was so disappointed that they didn't come. They just, I don't know if I moved too much or if I looked too, a fake corpse. But really that mindset of seeing yourself as a corpse, and the corpse is food, and the food is an offering, and the offering is like really extensive. That's chud.
Okay. Well, that sounds wonderful, because we practice the Kusali practice in our Lonchanintik Nondro, and it's really good to make those connections with the different practices that we do. Yeah. And the other, sorry,
is it should. I say when we truly dedicate, we're not just saying the formulaic dedication, where you really dedicate all that you have, all that you virtue, all the effort of practice, and really dedicate, and then rest and the emptiness of it, that it wasn't, it's like a beautiful illusion that you've given to sentient beings. That's chud.
Okay. And something else, what can I do to help someone who's already dead, but their spirit or their sort of ghost seems to be hanging around? Sometimes people come to me and ask, you know, they have a feeling that they go into the deceased room and funny things happen and so forth, and they ask me what should they do.
Sur is very good with that. Since we're talking about there are a number of practices to do. You know, you can sponsor practices, you can sponsor Akshobhya, but Sur is very, very good for that, to satisfy that spirit. And
okay.
Yeah.
Had another question come in. The dying process can be far from perfect for a lot of beings. Family relationships are fraught. What can beginners do for loved ones who died in unpleasant circumstances?
Well, if it is immediate, then of course Phowa is really good. One of the Phowa practices of the compassionate hook, or the Tara for the dead. Tara for the dead is one thing I want to say here is that the Phowa, the compassionate hook, that really depends on your level of realization. It works better when the person has just died. With the Phowa for the Tara, the deceased, I think that has it goes further into the time after death. That's not as time limited. That's my experience. That's not a teaching. That's just an experience. For those who have died in unpleasant circumstances, like violent circumstances, if you really care about them and you can afford it, then sponsoring Akshobhya, 100,000 recitations of the Akshobhya Dharani, which is quite long, and the commission of an image. We do this through mahakaruna.org. They organize it, and it's sponsored in Tibet. We've had practitioners here who used to do the mantra, but one of them, after I think it was 30 million of that Dharani, she stopped. She's old too. And the image can be sponsored by commissioning a statue or a tanka, or at Kandroling, where people commission tiles. But otherwise, I think it's really helpful to connect through offering butter lamps. If you light candles and butter lamps yourself, and see it as a luminous path, but dedicating any of your practice, any of your exalted practices, all of these practices are the skillful means of bodhisattvas. And so then dedicating your practice to the deceased, that helps.
Just a couple more. A request from Shivari to please visit Australia again soon.
What?
A request from Shivari to please visit Australia again soon. And Veronica Amiante, thank you, dear teacher, from Uruguay. I can't say that, I'm sorry. We miss you.
Oh, thank you.
And
miss Australia too. The last time I was there, we had this like hilarious road trip, through Australia. I saw much more of Australia than I'd ever seen. And I went to Perth, and I saw Western Australia, which I'd never seen, and flew over the desert. It's such a magical place, magical with spikes.
Another thank you for opening my mind's eye to another practice. Then we have a question. When you enter the bardo of dying, is there an automatic response? Sometimes the process of dying happens quickly and you're in the hands of medics and you are aware but unable to speak.
But that's where this practice of Tonglen, of like having compassion for all those around you and all of those who are in similar situations, that can be continued for as long as you breathe. If you've cultivated it in your daily life, if you remind yourself again and again of bodhicitta, the wish that all beings be freed from suffering and find temporary and ultimate happiness, and you carry it on your breath, and you think of it in all kinds of situations, you know, like especially in really irritating situations. Then when this disruption in this kind of wild intervention happens, then you're still carrying it on your breath, and also your faith in Amitabha, your faith in your teachers. And the Chud practice helps, because when I first started doing Phowa and first received the teachings from Rinpoche in 1978, I really thought that this is a way to get control over death. And you know, I've written these really extensive, you know, instructions. You know, do not do this, do not do that. But now I've seen like what can happen. You know, because I have 3 people who have been drastically and suddenly compromised by bad aftercare and surgery. And I mean, that's so unexpected. You don't expect that. And one died. You know, we don't expect people to die in childbirth anymore. And so then you really don't know. You really don't have the a warning unless you're really lucky in your intuition. And so then just carrying it on the breath, cultivating the reliance on your teacher. I think that's the most important thing. Guru Yoga, Guru Rinpoche, inseparable with your teacher.
Thank you. More thank yous from Alessandra in Germany, from Star in Australia, from Kirsten. And another question has just popped in. Can people affect your process through prayer when a person is dying and pray you back into this life?
Can you say that again?
Yeah.
And by the way, it's Kirsten DeLeo, not Karen DeLeo. Yeah, what?
Can people affect your process through prayer when a person is dying and pray you back into this life?
That is a very esoteric question, actually. Why? Because in one way, we're on the trajectory of our karmic causes and conditions. And in another way, all karma is interdependent, and prayer is part of that interdependence, both our prayer and the prayer of others. So I would say possibly, I would say that it's why we do all these big ceremonies, you know, for our teachers and request that they stay. It's why Ananda was reviled for not asking the Buddha to stay longer, and yet the Buddha himself was enlightened. He could have changed his own karma if he'd chosen, but it was his demonstration. And so I think you can change maybe the time of death, but not death itself.
Herring, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you so much for all that you've shared with us today, dear Khadro. And we'll now dedicate the merit with Chagdud Rinpoche's dedication prayer from the Red Tara Sur practice, which we use in each session of Living is Dying.
Okay, can you lead it though?
This virtuous accumulation of merit we offer, so that all obstacles dissolve, and that at the time of our death each of us may find ease in dying and swift rebirth in the pure land of great bliss, quickly gaining enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Thank you. And so
And
be it.
thank you.
I just want to run through the pictures. I want to see all of you.
Okay. So
Just
while
don't go.
no, we won't close the meeting.
Okay, I'm going to see.
Ross, can you take the prayer off, please?
Look up at the camera. So while Khadro's looking there, next week on Living is Dying, we'll be discussing Chapter 11, Questions about Caring for the Dying and the Dead, facilitated by Annie Zangmo, with guest speakers Annie Langsam, Kirsten Isbell, and Judy Uppiner. So we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. And thank you
So
so
happy to see everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carola.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
so much.
Hey, bye.
Khadro.
Bye, Khadro.
Thank you. Bye.
Please stay well.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for your
Bye,
teaching.
Khadro.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Khadro.
Please stay well and come to Australia.